Chapter 4, Part A of Greener Than You Think. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Greener Than You Think by Ward Moore. Chapter 4, Part A, Man Triumphant 2. Everything I had visualized in the broker's office turned out too pessimistically accurate. Consolidated Pemmican and Allied Concentrates was nothing but a mailing address in one of the most forlorn of Manhattan buildings, long before jettisoned by the tide of commerce. The factory, no bigger than a very small house, was a broken-windowed affair whose solid brick construction alone saved it from total demolition at the playful hands of the local children. The roof had long since fallen in, and symbolical grass and weeds had pushed their way through cracks in the floor to flourish in a sickly and surreptitious way. The whole concern, until my stock purchase, had been the chattel and creature of one Button Gwinnett Fleas. In appearance, he was such a genuine Yankee, lean and sharp, with a slight stoop and prying eyes, that one quite expected a straw to protrude from between his thin lips, or have him draw from his pocket a wooden nutmeg and offer it for sale. After getting to know him, I learned this apparent shrewdness was a pure defense mechanism, that he was really an artless and ingenuous soul who had been taught by other hands the swindle he practiced for many years, and had merely continued it because he knew no way of making an honest living. He was, like myself, unattached, and disarmed whatever lingering suspicions of him I might have by offering to share his quarters with me until I should have found suitable accommodations. The poor fellow was completely at my mercy, and I not only forbore generously to press my advantage, but made him vice president of the newly reorganized concern, permitting him to buy back a portion of the stock he had sold. The boom in the market having sent our shares up to an abnormal 1/2, we flooded our brokers with selling offers, at the same time spreading rumors, by no means exaggerated, of the firm's instability, buying back control when Consolidated Pemmican reached its norm of 1/16. We made no fortunes on this transaction, but I was enabled to look ahead to a year on a more comfortable economic level than ever before. But it was by no means in my plans merely to continue to milk the corporation. I am, I hope, not without vision, and I saw Consolidated Pemmican, under my direction, turned into an active and flourishing industry. Its very decrepitude, I reasoned, was my opportunity. Starting from scratch and working with nothing, I would build a substantial structure. One of the new businesses which had sprung up was that of personally conducted tours of the grass. After the experience of Goots and myself, parachute landings had been ruled out as too hazardous. But someone happily thought of the use of snowshoes, and it was on these clumsy means that tourists, at a high cost and at less than snail's pace, tramped wonderingly over the tamed menace. My thought then, as I explained to Fleas, was to reactivate the factory and sell my product to the sightseers. Food, high in calories and small in bulk, was a necessity on their excursions, and nourishing pemmican, high in protein, quickly replaced the cloying and messy candy bar. We made no profit, but we suffered no loss, and the factory was in actual operation, so that no snoopers could ever accuse us of selling stock in an enterprise with a purely imaginary existence. I liked New York. It accorded well with my temperament, and I wondered how I had ever endured those weary years far from the center of the country's financial life, its theaters, and its great human drama. Give me the old Times Square in the East 50s any day, and you can keep Death Valley in functional architecture. I was at home at last, and I foresaw a future of slow but sure progress toward a position of eminence and respectability. The undignified days of Miss Frances and La Facessy faded from my mind, and I was aware of the grass only as a cause for selling our excellent pemmican. I won't say I didn't read the occasional accounts of the wheat appearing in Time or the newspapers, or watch films of it in the movies with more than common interest, but it was no longer an engrossing factor in my life. I was now taken up with larger concerns, working furiously to expand my success, and for a year after leaving the Intelligencer I doubt if I gave it more than a minute's thought a day. The Band of Salt remained an impregnable bulwark. Where the winter rains leached it, new tons of the mineral replaced those washed away. Constant observation showed no advance. If anything, the edge of the grass impinging directly on the salt was sullenly retreating. The central bulk remained, a vast, obstinate mass, but most people thought it would somehow end by consuming itself, if indeed this doom were not anticipated by fresh scatterings of salt striking at its vitals as soon as the rain ceased. No more than any other reader, then, was I disquieted by the following small item in my morning paper. Freak weed stirs speculation. San Diego, March 7th, AP. An unusual patch of Bermuda grass discovered growing in one of the city park's flower beds here today caused an excited flurry among observers. Reaching to a height of nearly 4 feet and defying all efforts of the park gardeners to uproot it, the vivid green interloper reminded fearful spectators of the plague which overran Los Angeles 2 years ago. Scientists were reassuring, however, as they pointed out that the giantism of the Los Angeles devilgrass was not transmissible by seed, and that no stolons or rhizomes of the abnormal plant had any means of traveling to San Diego, protected as it is by the band of salt confining the Los Angeles growth. I was even more confident, for I had seen with my own eyes the shoots grown by Miss Frances from seeds of the inoculated plant. A genuine freak this time, I thought, and promptly forgot the item. Would have forgotten it, I should say, had I not an hour later received a telegram. Return instantly, can use your impressions of new grass, Lafassae. I knew from the fact he had used only 9 of the 10 words paid for, he considered the situation serious. The answer prompted by impulse would, I knew, not be transmitted by the telegraph company. And on second thought, I saw no reason why I should not take advantage of the editor's need. Business was slack, and I was overworked. A succession of petty annoyances had driven me almost to a nervous breakdown, and the vacation at the expense of the new Los Angeles Daily Intelligencer sounded pleasantly restful after the serious work of grappling with industrial affairs. Of course, I did not need their paltry few dollars, but at the moment some of my assets were frozen, and a weekly paycheck would be temporarily convenient, saving me the bother of liquidating a portion of my smaller investments. Besides, if, as was barely possible, this new growth was in some unbelievable way an extension of the old, it would of course ruin our sales of pemmican to the tourists, and it behooved me to be on the spot. I therefore answered, "Consider double former salary wire transportation." Next day, the great transcontinental plane powder-pigeoned along the runway of the magnificent new Los Angeles airport. I was in no great hurry to see the editor, but took a taxi instead to the headquarters of the American Alpinists Incorporated, where there was frank worry over the news, and acknowledgment that no further consignments of pemmican would be accepted until the situation became more settled. I left their offices in a thoughtful mood. Pausing only to wire Fleas to unload as much stock as he could, for even if this were only a temporary scare, it would undoubtedly affect the market, I finally drove to the Intelligencer. Knowing Lafassae, I hardly expected to be received with either cordiality or politeness, but I was not quite prepared for the actual salute. A replica of his original office had been devised, even to the shabby letters on the door, and he was seated in his chair beneath the gallery of cartoons. He began calmly enough when I entered, speaking in a low, almost gentle tone, helping himself to snuff between sentences, but gradually working up into a quite artistic crescendo. "Ah, Wiener, as you yourself would undoubtedly put it in your inimitable way, a bad penny always turns up. I could not say canis revertit suam vomitem, for it would invert a relationship. The puke has returned to the dog. It is a sad thought that the listless exercise which eventuated in your begetting was indulged in by 2 whose genes and chromosomes united to produce a male rather than a female child. For think, Wiener, if you had been born a woman, with what gusto would you have peddled your flaccid flesh upon the city streets and offered your miserable dog's body to the reluctant use of undiscriminating customers? You are the paradigmatic whore, Wiener, and I weep for the physiological accident which condemns you to sell your servility rather than your vulva. Ah, Wiener, It restores my faith in human depravity.